From the Oklahoma newsroom, this is an OU update. I'm Jenni Carlson. The Sooners' resume is complete after a Bedlam beatdown on Saturday. Now all the Sooners can do is wait and see what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee does. Ryan Aber joins us on the phone. And Ryan, we've got two rankings where we're going to see how the Sooners fit in. The first of those two comes this Tuesday night as we see what the Selection Committee says about where the Sooners rank at this point. They were 3 last week. Is there reason to believe they could move up and maybe stay up when those final rankings come out this next weekend?
Well, I think that they're likely to remain at 3 this week, although they could move up 1 spot at least because of the committee's stated desire to reward conference championships. And Oklahoma's already clinched a conference championship. There's no doubt about that. The other teams playing above them, Alabama and Clemson, still have yet to play for their conference championship because they have conference championship games to play on Saturday. So we could see them move up, but I think if they move up and those other teams win, they're likely to fall back down in the next rankings. We've seen the way that the committee has handled things on a fluid basis with what happened last year with TCU and Baylor specifically. But it'll still be interesting to watch what happens on Tuesday night to see where the Sooners are ranked going into the last week.
Yeah, obviously 3 games left to really impact these rankings as we see them playing out. Ryan, Clemson in that ACC championship game against North Carolina, Alabama in the SEC championship game against Florida, and then the Big Ten winner, Iowa, likely to stay in that 4th spot, but Michigan State will be their opponent, and likely the winner of that game is the 4th team into the playoff. But obviously there could be upsets in those other 2 games. It doesn't seem as likely maybe, but how could this all shake out in terms of, you know, we're talking about where the Sooners could land in that 2-3 spot. They're kind of at the mercy of what the 1 spot does. They'd really have to have some help to move up to that number 1 spot in the rankings, I would think.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They would probably need both Clemson and Alabama to lose in the conference championship game to move up to that number 1 spot. Now, it'll be really interesting to see if an upset happens in one of those 2. You really wouldn't mind seeing an upset, especially in the SEC title game, because if Clemson's the number 1, they're going to go to Miami. There's no doubt about that. But if say, Alabama gets beat and OU's moves up to the number 2 spot, they could go to Dallas, and that's certainly a much more favorable crowd draw for the Sooners. And it could be really interesting, especially if Clemson's 1 and Alabama's 2. If OU's 3, OU's going to have the decided advantage in that Cotton Bowl game down in Jerry World. But it also could be the hottest ticket ever for a bowl game, with Oklahoma and Alabama having a rematch of that Sugar Bowl a couple years ago down in Jerry World. Definitely
so. And Ryan, just to reiterate for people, because I mean, last year obviously the college football playoff was in its infancy, but teams around here are not really involved, so I'm not sure how much people were really paying attention. As I mentioned before, that number 1 seed, Ryan, that's the kingpin. The committee is protecting them first and foremost, and that's why you said if it's Clemson, they go to Miami, closer to their campus. Obviously, like you say, maybe OU's a 3 in Dallas, but that the committee doesn't worry about protecting the 2. It's all about the 1.
Right, especially if you would severely, obviously you wouldn't disadvantage the 1 in favor of advantaging the 2. So they could slide there. Now, you could also see the Sooners wind up as the 4 and playing Clemson in the Orange Bowl down at Sun Life Stadium in Miami. But the much more preferred route for the Sooners would be to play closer to home, play in Dallas, have your fans have an easier trek down there. The really interesting thing will be if Alabama somehow slides up into the 1 spot, what they do. Because if they're matched up with the Sooners, you wouldn't figure they would send, even though the distances are very similar between Tuscaloosa and Miami and Dallas, they certainly wouldn't send them to Dallas to play the Sooners as the 4. They would send them to Miami, and could shake things up quite a bit with where the pairings fall in the college football playoff. It's going to be a fun week for Sooners fans. although a lot of biting of the fingernails over the next 8 days or so, 7 days or so.
Yeah, definitely so. Lots. In terms of the rankings, a lot will yet to be determined, and how these teams that are still playing, what happens in those championship games. We'll know this weekend what those rankings are and where the Sooners will play. They're in. There seems little doubt of that. Though both of those national semifinals, by the way, are on December 31st. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.